All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking on a genuinely fascinating textual analysis. We're going to objectively map out what is, without a doubt, one of the most monumental historical and theological narratives ever recorded, pulling directly from the source transcript of the life of Jesus. Now, whether you're approaching this as a deeply profound religious text or simply as an incredibly influential piece of ancient literature, our goal today is exactly the same. We're going to decode its shared narrative architecture. You know, what's wild is that the story doesn't actually begin with a quiet nativity scene or a long list of ancestors. No, it kicks off with this absolutely breathtaking cosmic prologue. In the beginning, the Word already existed. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. This opening immediately sets the grand scale of the text, and it introduces the driving theme of the entire narrative, the ultimate identity of this central figure. So, to digest this epic narrative efficiently, we're going to trace it through 6 distinct chapters. The Word becomes human, signs and conflict, the Last Supper, trial and crucifixion, the resurrection, and finally, the call to believe. Kicking things off with Act 1, the Word becomes human. Right out of the gate, what's really interesting is how the text deliberately juxtaposes the figure of John the Baptist with Jesus. It sets up this really clear contrast. John is strictly the messenger. He baptizes with water. Jesus, on the other hand, is described as the Word who baptizes with the Holy Spirit and actually takes away the sin of the world. It's a narrative device used to impartially establish Jesus' divine authority from the very first moments of his public life. Moving right along to Chapter 2, Signs, Teachings, and Conflict. Now, this is where the narrative really leans into metaphorical language to build out character identity. Jesus directly refers to himself as the bread of life, the light of the world, the good shepherd, the true vine, and the resurrection and the life. Structurally speaking, these aren't just your standard moral teachings. They are explicit, monumental claims to divine identity, just woven right into everyday metaphors. And here's where we see this constant, almost playful friction between the physical and the spiritual. You've got the religious leader Nicodemus scratching his head about literal physical rebirth when Jesus says he must be born again, or the Samaritan woman asking for literal well water when Jesus offers her living water. The text brilliantly shows how his audiences continually misunderstood his true spiritual message because they were so hyper-focused on the material world. Then, bam. We hit this crucial tipping point when Jesus drops this absolute bombshell on his detractors. Before Abraham was born, I am. This specific claim to eternal existence pushes the religious authorities right to the breaking point. It's the ultimate narrative catalyst, completely setting the stage for the dramatic climax that's about to unfold. Which brings us to Part 3, the Last Supper. The narrative zooms way in here. We go from very public debates to this incredibly intimate, tense room. The text portrays some deeply human moments of confusion. Guys like Peter, Thomas, and Philip are totally lost, and Judas actually leaves to betray him. But all of this anxiety is directly countered by Jesus. He introduces a new commandment to love one another, promises a prepared place, defines himself as the way, the truth, and the life, and promises the Holy Spirit as a helper to guide them once he's gone.
All right, Part 4, Trial and Crucifixion.
Talk about a tonal shift. This sequence is literally the fastest-paced, most climactic part of the entire transcript. It objectively maps out a relentless, rapid-fire succession of events. In less than 24 hours, the story moves from the betrayal and arrest in the garden on Thursday night to a trial before the Roman governor Pilate on Friday morning, to brutal execution at Golgotha by noon, and finally, burial in a new tomb by Friday evening. The pacing here is just relentless. And right in the absolute thick of that rapid downfall, the Roman governor Pilate asks this famously cynical question: what is truth? It's a single, brilliant line that perfectly encapsulates the dramatic tension of the entire text. It's this stark, unavoidable clash between earthly political power and these profound, unyielding spiritual claims. And that clash leads directly to the cross. Now, according to the narrative, Jesus doesn't just passively fade away. He voluntarily completes his earthly mission with these incredibly stark, definitive final words: "It is finished." Which takes us to Act 5, the resurrection. But of course, the narrative structure dictates that the story doesn't end in a tomb. Following the empty tomb, Jesus appears to his disciples. And you really have to note how Thomas's famous shift from deep skepticism to complete devotion plays out here. When he's invited to touch the physical scars, he exclaims, "My Lord and my God." This is huge. It represents the ultimate realization of identity, essentially finalizing the text's answer to that recurring question of who Jesus really is.
And I absolutely love the narrative symmetry here revolving around the number 3. Later on the shore, Jesus pointedly asks Peter, "Do you love me?" exactly 3 times. This beautifully and symmetrically reverses Peter's 3 fearful denials made on the night of the arrest, offering him complete restoration.
Finally, Section 6, the call to believe. So in these closing moments, the source material pulls off something completely unexpected for an ancient biography. It literally breaks the fourth wall. It shifts from a historical narrative to a direct address to the reader. These have been written in order that you may believe that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of God. Here we see the text's explicitly stated agenda. The entire story we just mapped out was curated specifically to elicit a responsive belief from you, the viewer. And to make sure we understand exactly what the text means by that, we have to objectively report the specific theological framework it uses to define belief. It's essentially 3 steps. Step 1, affirm having sinned against a holy God. Step 2, rely on Jesus' payment on the cross. And step 3, receive life everlasting. This is the precise, structured definition of belief that the narrative presents to its audience. So that leaves us with a pretty massive question. Regardless of where you personally stand on the ideology, how does confronting the sheer narrative architecture of this text reshape your understanding of Western history, theology, and the ultimate search for truth? I mean, this is a story that has fundamentally shaped millennia of human history. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer to unpack it structurally. Let that final question sit with you for a bit and keep exploring.